Ready to dive into something kind of wild?
Always.
Okay, so we're looking at two spiritual practices,
Yeah.
and they seem like total opposites, right?
Yeah.
Buddhist jhāna meditation, like that super focused stillness thing,
hmm
and then Christian speaking in tongues, all that, like energy and emotion.
Yeah, totally different vibes.
Right. But what if I told you, like, what if neuroscience is saying they might actually have a shared path to, like, deep bliss?
It's true, and it's pretty mind-blowing. There's this new research from McGill University,
Oh,
actually.
wow.
Just came out, published in the American Journal of Human Biology.
Nice.
And it suggests both these practices might be using something called, get this, the attention, arousal, and release spiral.
Whoa, okay. Attention, arousal, and release spiral. I'm already intrigued.
Right. And this spiral, it might be like the key to unlocking those feelings people talk about, profound joy, surrender.
Okay, I gotta know more. Attention, arousal, and release spiral. Break it down for me. Like, how does this actually work?
So picture this, like a positive feedback loop, right?
Mm-hmm.
It all starts with focusing your attention.
Okay.
Now, for someone meditating, that might be their breath, right?
Really?
But for someone praying, it could be a feeling, like a sense of the divine.
Yeah, yeah.
But here's the thing. Holding that focus, whatever it is, that actually triggers a feeling of joy.
Really?
Yeah, and then that joy makes it even easier to focus, so it kind of snowballs.
Oh, I see. So the joy feeds the focus, feeds the joy, and so on.
Exactly. And that cycle, it eventually leads to this feeling of release, of surrender, which just makes the whole experience even deeper.
So more focus, more joy, easier to let go, and the whole thing intensifies, like a bliss snowball.
That's it. And the wild part is, this whole spiral thing, it's totally new to psychology.
Wow.
Like nobody's talked about this before. And to think Buddhist jhāna meditation, ancient Eastern tradition.
Right, thousands of years old.
And then Christian speaking in tongues, its whole own history, cultural context.
Totally different worlds.
But they both seem to have figured out this spiral thing independently. It's kind of amazing.
That really is fascinating. Makes you wonder what other practices might be doing the same thing without us realizing.
Right.
But okay, hold on, back up a sec. How'd the researchers actually study this? Did they just watch people meditating and praying?
Oh, they went way deeper than just watching.
Yeah.
Like they wanted to get inside the experience,
Yeah.
see what it actually felt like for the people doing it.
Yeah, the subjective side of things.
Exactly. So they actually embedded themselves, like went to Buddhist retreats, went to evangelical Christian services.
Oh, really immerse themselves?
Yeah, and they'd talk to the people there, ask them to describe, like, every little shift in their attention, their emotions during the practice.
Oh, interesting. So trying to capture those micro moments of the experience.
Exactly. It gave them this super rich, detailed picture of what was going on internally for these folks.
Okay, so they're getting at the heart of it, not just the outward stuff.
Right. But they didn't stop there. Remember I mentioned brain activity.
Yeah, that's where it gets really interesting.
So on top of all the interviews and stuff, they were also recording brain activity the whole time using, things like fMRI, like taking a video of the brain in action, basically.
So we're seeing what's happening in the brain while people are in these deep states. Okay, now I gotta know what they find. Like, when they looked at the brain activity, were there big differences between, say, the meditators and the speakers in tongues?
Well, they're still analyzing all that brain data. It's a huge project.
Oh, of course, yeah.
But early findings, this is fascinating. They're suggesting both practices, even though they look and feel so different, right?
Totally.
It seems they both involve this cognitive shift that basically creates a super immersive experience.
A cognitive shift. So something's changing in the brain, allowing for that deep immersion.
Exactly. And that seems to be like the foundation for that whole attention, arousal, release thing to kick in.
So even though Buddhist meditation and Christian speaking in tongues are so different on the surface, there's something happening at the brain level that lets them both tap into this, like, shared path to bliss. That's pretty wild. And, like, the possibilities, I'm already thinking new mindfulness apps, therapies for anxiety, maybe even, I don't know, all sorts of things that could help people tap into the spiral.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Imagine if we could, like, bottle that feeling,
Yeah.
help people experience more well-being just from understanding how their own minds work.
Mm-hmm.
That's the power of this research. It's saying these states, this focus, joy, surrender, it's not just for, like, spiritual masters. It's in all of us, in our brains, waiting to be tapped into.
That is mind-blowing.
Right.
Okay, we got to take a quick break, but when we come back, we'll dive even deeper into this. We'll talk about the implications of this research, like how it could change the way we think about spirituality, mental health, even just like human potential in general. Don't go anywhere. I mean, it is wild to think about, right? Like brain activity, something we can measure, being linked to these huge spiritual experiences. It makes you rethink that whole science versus spirituality thing, you know?
For sure. And what's so cool about this research is, like, it could actually help bridge the gap between different spiritual traditions.
Yeah.
I mean, so often we see these practices as totally separate, sometimes even like opposed to each other,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, for sure.
But then you find this common thread, this neurological thing that connects them. It's almost like science is making a case for unity, for understanding. What do you think?
I totally agree. Like the research is saying, hey, maybe we're not so different after all. Maybe deep down we're all tapping into the same like human capacity for connection, for joy, for, transcendence, all that.
Yeah.
And that brings up a really interesting point, I think. Like if we can understand the science behind these experiences, it makes them more accessible, right? It's not about like faith or belief anymore. It's about a potential that we all have that we can cultivate.
Exactly. It demystifies these practices, makes them less intimidating, like some people might have felt excluded from that world for whatever reason. But this research is saying, no, this could be for everyone.
It's like we're discovering a new operating system for the mind, one that's like hardwired for joy and focus and peace. It's exciting, but also, I don't know, a little daunting. Like,
Yeah.
Are there any downsides to looking at spirituality through this scientific lens?
That's a good question. I mean, we have to be careful, right? We don't want to oversimplify things or exploit these traditions.
Right.
It's not about replacing the spiritual side with just like a bunch of brain scans,
Yeah.
It's more about using both perspectives, the spiritual and the scientific, to get a fuller picture.
It's about balance. Like, science can be a tool to understand these mysteries, but it shouldn't replace the mystery itself.
That's a good way to put it. And what really strikes me is how clever these researchers were. Just the fact that they saw the connection between these two practices in the first place.
Yeah.
Meditation and speaking in tongues, they seem so different. But these researchers had the open-mindedness to see a link and then figure out how to study it.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of science, probably.
Totally. It's about asking those like out there questions, the ones nobody else is asking. And who knows what else we might discover if we all did a little more of that,
I think so too.
But okay, let's bring our listener into this for a sec. We've been talking big picture stuff, but this is really about each of us, right? Our own personal journeys.
For sure.
So think about it. Have you ever felt that like deep focus and joy that kind of pulls you in and makes you lose track of time?
Yeah, like you're just totally absorbed in something.
Right. Maybe it was when you were creating something or connecting with nature or even just having a really amazing conversation. Whatever it was, take a moment to like really remember that feeling.
Pay attention to what was happening, where your attention was, how you felt, that kind of thing. You might surprise yourself with what you notice about your own capacity for joy, focus, surrender, all that.
It's like this research is reminding us that we're all connected, not just to each other, but to something bigger. And within that connection, there's this huge potential for like peace and fulfillment.
Exactly.
So let's take all this and actually apply it to our lives, right?
Right.
We don't need a lab or fancy equipment to experience this AAR spiral thing.
Right. We can create the conditions for it to happen naturally.
Okay, so when we come back, we're going to get practical. We'll talk about some simple but powerful ways to actually experience this attention, arousal, and release spiral in your everyday life. Stay tuned.
Okay, so we're back, and we've been talking about this attention, arousal, and release spiral, how it can lead to those like really deep experiences of bliss and focus. And the cool thing is you don't need to become a monk or anything to benefit from it.
Right, exactly.
So let's talk about how we can actually tap into this in our regular lives. Like, what can we do?
Well, the researchers think this AAR thing, it's like a basic part of how our minds work. So it's accessible to everyone. It's just about setting things up the right way.
Okay, I like that. So how do we create those right conditions so this spiral can really take off?
It's like, imagine you're gardening, right?
Okay.
You need the right soil, the right sunlight, the right water for a plant to thrive. It's the same with this AAR spiral. There are like key ingredients we need.
Okay, I'm with you. So what are the ingredients?
Well, we've got attention, joy, and surrender. All right, let's break those down. First up, attention. I mean, We all know how easy it is to get distracted these days, right?
Totally. Yeah.
So how do we actually cultivate that kind of focus we need to get this spiral going?
Think of attention like a muscle.
Okay.
The more you use it, the stronger it gets.
Yeah.
So things like mindfulness meditation, that can be super helpful.
Yeah, where you're just focusing on your breath or whatever.
Exactly. It's training for your mind, basically, to stay present, to not get pulled away by every little thought that pops up.
And that takes time, right? Like, we're not going to become attention masters overnight.
For sure. It's a practice.
Mm-hmm.
And as you practice, you might start to notice certain things that kind of grab your attention naturally, and they also make you feel like joyful.
Okay, joy. That's our second ingredient.
Okay.
It's funny. We don't always link joy with focus. Like, think of joy as this spontaneous thing. But you're saying we can actually cultivate joy through focusing.
Exactly. Remember, that AAR thing is a loop, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're focused on something that truly interests you, something you're passionate about, that can actually spark joy.
Okay, so the focus leads to the joy, which then fuels more focus, and it builds from there.
Exactly. And that joy can come from anything, really, as long as it's something that that really resonates with you.
So, like, if I love playing guitar, just focusing on the music, the feel of the strings, that could trigger this whole upward spiral of joy and focus.
Exactly. Or maybe it's writing for you, or gardening, or, who knows.
Yeah, find what lights you up and really dive in.
That's it.
Okay, but there's the third piece here, right? Surrender. Where does that fit in? And honestly, that one sounds kind of tough.
It is tricky, yeah. Surrender is all about letting go, like really letting go of control and trusting the process.
Yeah, I can see how that would be challenging.
It's about being in the experience fully without, like, judging it or resisting it, just letting it be.
So how do we get better at surrendering?
Well, a good starting point is just noticing where you tend to hold on tight in your life. Maybe it's a fear of messing up or a need to be perfect or not liking change. Whatever it is, once you see it, you can start to, like, loosen your grip a little.
Yeah, like consciously choosing to let go a bit.
Right. And you might find as you practice this, it actually gets easier to let go of the stuff that's not helping you and just be more open to whatever comes next.
This whole spiral thing, it's reminding me of that flow state people talk about. Like when you're so absorbed in something, you lose track of time.
You're totally right. Flow state is a perfect example of the AAR spiral in action.
Yeah, I get that in writing sometimes, and it feels amazing.
Exactly. You're focused on something challenging but also enjoyable that sparks joy, and then you just get lost in it. It's like the research is giving us a way to understand what's happening in our brains when we feel that way.
It's amazing how science is like catching up to what these spiritual traditions have known for like forever.
And the best part is, it's not just for a select few, it's for everyone. If we're willing to do the work, to cultivate our attention, find our joy, practice surrendering, we can all tap into these incredible states of being.
What an awesome message. This has been a truly mind-blowing deep dive. We've gone from these two spiritual practices that seem totally different to the science behind this attention, arousal, and release spiral, and even figured out some ways to actually experience it in our own lives.
Absolutely. It's been a wild ride.
But before we go, I want to leave you with one last thought. If this AAR spiral can be accessed through so many things, meditation, music, a good conversation, what does that tell us about joy, focus, and surrender? Are they just like states of mind, or are they something deeper, something fundamental to who we are, just waiting to be expressed?
That's a great question to ponder. And as you explore that, approach it with curiosity, openness, and remember, the journey is the reward. Thanks for joining us.
We'll see you next time.